Because this is actually extremely concerning. For the first time in history, the United States of America is starting to let its GDP to debt ratio go over 100%. And that should concern you. And I want to make this abundantly clear for all of you back at home. There has never, and I repeat, never in all of human history has there been a nation that has been over 120% in debt that has ever recovered economically since. That is the number one indicator of an empire that is about to collapse. I need you to remember that. And now we're going to
Strong's G 4098. Pipto. Pipto.
listen to Whitney Webb very closely because, well, she has some really important things to share. This clip.
Stop buying pants that are useless after a couple wears. Instead, get these.
I'm about to show you is from a channel called Impact Theory. I recommend you guys do check it out because they have a ton of awesome interviews in the economic space there. But with that being said, let's listen to what Whitney Webb has to say here.
The amount of debt the U.S. government has accrued, I think, is a testament to the poor fiscal management of the U.S. government. And not just the executive branch, but Congress as well. And it's been going on for a very, very very long time, and not a lot has been done about it. And really, in the post 9/11 era, the amount of debt that, the U.S. government has taken on has just absolutely ballooned when you compare it to previous decades. And I think a lot of that has to do with the foreign wars that the U.S. government has engaged in, including ones that aren't formally declared, in this sort of effort to expand, the military empire abroad and sort of maintain that hegemony and dominance. And historically, a lot of that was also directly related to dollar hegemony, the petrodollar system, which now we know has essentially been on the way.
Hegemony.
Out, but colleague of mine, Mark Goodwin, put out a book a few years ago about this idea of the Bitcoin dollar system, and this idea that the US government would sort of use Bitcoin and create the system that's like an analog to the petrodollar system, where because most people, when Bitcoin is purchased, usually it's done with, by buying dollars first in order to purchase Bitcoin, for example. And in that type of situation, you'd be just like in the case of, the petrodollar, where, the price of oil it's priced in dollars. You're generating artificial demand for dollars to buy some sort of energy commodity or energy asset. And Bitcoin sort of is an energy asset at the end of the day. It's moving, essentially attempting to create the same system, but instead of with oil, with Bitcoin. And most of the Bitcoin holdings in the world are concentrated in the United States, and the US government itself is one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin in the world. So I think there's sort of this effort there to do that. And this was actually implicit in Trump's speech that he gave at the Bitcoin conference a few months ago, sort of saying that's what he sort of saw utility in Bitcoin for, in a sense. And but I think also that has a lot of causes a lot of complications when it relates to the ethos of Bitcoin, which was originally about stopping irresponsible central bank policy and fiscal policy. The idea that you would yoke Bitcoin to the US dollar instead of using it to challenge the US dollar or challenge fiat or challenge debt-based currency or a debt-based monetary system. Obviously, if you join, the US dollar to Bitcoin, having Bitcoin be a challenge to those things essentially kind of has to stop. And really in that situation, you could have Bitcoin enable that type of irresponsible fiscal policy because you could, you would essentially be using it as a sink for hyperinflation at the end of the day.
It is a really interesting frame to think of Bitcoin as a sink for hyperinflation of the US dollar, but I don't know that a lot of people are going to understand what that means. So if you had to say that same thing, but from a different angle, how would you explain to somebody how, one, why is the hyperinflation going to come about? And two, how is it Bitcoin that becomes the sink for that?
May 23rd, 2024. Remember this date, because this was the day the financial world
stop that from becoming a runaway problem.
So essentially, if you were to like hyperinflate the dollar in this type of system, obviously the price of Bitcoin would appreciate as price in US dollars, but it's not, but Bitcoin itself isn't subject to inflation. So the people that hold Bitcoin in that case would really benefit in that type of scenario, but people that hold, dollars, for example, would not necessarily, but there's also this effort to sort of resolve this, that aspect of it by bringing stable coins into the equation, which are, digital dollars, but they're kind of gobbling up US treasuries. And are buying sort of like nation state level amount of US government debt and servicing the debt at the same time. So sort of the Bitcoin dollar system, as I understand it. And again, this is Mark Goodwin's work. So again, he can probably explain it a lot better than me and the detailed mechanisms and all of that. But as I understand it, you would have to have sort of these dollar stable coins in the mix as well, as a way to sort of absorb government debt. And even, these things may not be enough to absorb all of the debt that we have. And so there's these efforts right now, this idea of real world asset tokenization, there's this push into tokenizing what is referred to as natural capital or aspects, I guess major, like even entire ecosystems essentially, and tokenizing them and using that as sort of like, a store of wealth of finite supply. So there's this one effort, for example, that's seeking to token.
Okay, so there's a couple really important points here. Number one, I just need to talk about the fact that USDT, the most popular stablecoin that pretty much everybody uses right now, is actively buying US treasuries and bonds, right? And the reason why this is such a big deal is, in essence, USDT right now is already buying US debt. And so this phenomena that Whitney Webb is describing here is already in action. It's already being played out, and that should be a little bit concerning, because if you do have a stable coin which is basically bailing out the US dollar, and the government is privy to that and aware of that, you best believe that they're going to continue to allow that to happen. And one thing that Donald Trump said very recently in one of his speeches at Bitcoin Nashville conference, which I found very interesting, he said, and I quote, he says, "I think maybe cryptocurrency will be how the US gets out of debt." Right? I think for all of us, people who invest into cryptocurrency, whether you buy Bitcoin, XRP, whatever it may be, that's a little bit concerning. I mean, crypto shouldn't be bailing out the US dollar. The cryptocurrency needs to be, what's absorbing all of those people that are being abused by the current government system, right?